The words of my perfect teacher starts from the 4 common preliminary practices. We have finished the first one, the difficulty of finding the freedoms and advantages. You know the content now, but how is your practice? It is totally up to you to put the teachings into real practice. Now we move to the second common preliminary practice, the impermanence of life. Patrul Rinpoche placed an homage prayer in front of each chapter to praise his root guru's realization and great qualities. Seeing the impermanent and illusory nature of the 3 realms, you have left the trivial affairs of this life behind like spit. Through ascetic practice, you have followed the footsteps of the eminent virtuous ones of old. Peerless Guru, at your feet I humbly bow. Through this prayer, Patrul Rinpoche pays homage to his root guru, Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu. In the course of our own practice, we should often pray to our gurus using this homage prayer as well, which is the tradition of many practitioners of Tibetan Buddhism. When we pray, we may use this prayer. For example, when meditating on the impermanence of life, you should begin with the practice of Guru Yoga. Before proceeding to the meditation, once again, put your palms together and pray to your root guru, aspiring to cultivate a conviction in the impermanence of life with the guidance of the guru's blessing. It is essential to pray and pay homage with fervent faith. Then, what are the great qualities of Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu? Seeing the impermanent and illusory nature of the 3 realms. With wisdom, he directly perceived that the 3 realms, the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm, are a fleeting illusion, entirely characterized by emptiness, no self, and impermanence in nature, devoid of any inherent existence. You have left the trivial affairs of this life behind like spit. Thus, he didn't grasp and desire any of the worldly trivialities, including glory, wealth, status, and fame, and moreover, he left them behind like spittle in the dust. I recently read the biography of Jigme Gyalwai Nyugu. What a wonderful account of his life story. It says in the biography that he didn't have, not even for a split second, any envy or desire for the various displays of worldly beauty akin to heavenly beings or wealth resembling that of a Naga king. From his childhood until his death, he had unsurpassable faith in the Dharma. He spent his whole life pursuing the authentic Dharma, forgoing the 8 worldly concerns, and following his guru wholeheartedly. What he did is beyond an ordinary person's imagination. Through ascetic practice, you have followed the footsteps of the eminent virtuous ones of old. In terms of studying and practicing the Dharma, he had been following in the footsteps of eminent masters of the past, persevering with his ascetic practices. As seen from the biographies of many masters, they never parted from ascetic practices. Unlike some practitioners these days who are unwilling to endure any hardships, they wish to attain realization while living an easy, comfortable, and happy life. It is fine to study and practice the Dharma in a rather comfortable environment if external conditions permit. But some people have gone a bit far. They don't want to spend time or effort on the Dharma. And even when the Dharma is brought to their doorstep, they are still unwilling to accept it. Knowing how diligent the eminent masters of the past were, we practitioners of this later generation should feel very humble of ourselves. Past masters excelled greatly in pursuing the Dharma, generating renunciation, and assimilating the teachings that all phenomena are empty at the ultimate level and impermanent at the relative level. We should feel embarrassed when we claim to be disciples of these masters. The great Jigme Phuntsuk Rinpoche had all the great qualities described in this prayer, seeing the nature of the threefold world in his wisdom, regarding this life's worldly concerns as spittle in the dust, having no desire for pleasures that mundane people like, accepting all hardships for Dharma practice throughout his life, and practicing as diligently as the past eminent masters. Therefore, be it his blessing, power, wisdom, or realization, our guru is incomparable. How extremely fortunate we are that we encountered such a great teacher in this life. Peerless Guru, at your feet I humbly bow. At the feet of his root guru, who has such supreme qualities, Patrul Rinpoche bows in great veneration with body, speech, and mind, and pray wholeheartedly. May all the states of preliminary practices and main practices in my guru's mind stream soon merge into mine, so I can attain the same fruition as my great guru did. As I have mentioned many times, during our practice we should not separate ourselves from prayer and aspirations. You are currently studying Kempo Nawang Pelzang's A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher, which contains some analogies and similes that might be hard for you to understand. But they are from the wisdom mind of an enlightened practitioner, so their meaning far exceeds that of articles written by worldly people full of discursive thoughts. When you read this guidebook with fervent faith and pure wisdom, you are sure to obtain the corresponding states in your own minds. In fact, the state of mind of an author for a Dharma book is very important. If the author has generated great compassion, conviction about impermanence, and realization of the nature of all phenomena, then readers will definitely receive benefits and obtain definitive understanding. Therefore, I suggest that you study A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher while practicing ngondro. By doing so, I believe your mind stream will become more virtuous and refined. Those of you with rigid personalities will start to become flexible and gentle, not being overly attached to worldly things. Your faith in the Dharma will steadily grow, and you will be able to easily resolve any interpersonal conflict from within. Whether our practice integrates with our minds is up to us. If the teaching doesn't infiltrate our minds, our study of the Dharma becomes superficial. It is just like taking courses at a university. When one only studies the text without ever thinking of taming one's mind. The way I am teaching the words of my perfect teacher this time follows the style of practical guidance, and the explanation I provide is also very comprehensive. There are still more treasures embedded in the text, but I am unable to go deeper due to the limitation of my mining tool. I just try my very best to dig out some treasures which I find very precious and share those with you, the Dharma friends with corresponding karmic connections. With your faith and wisdom, you will discover the rest of the treasures on your own, those that are beyond my ability to discover for you. The content on impermanence we are about to cover is very important. Please don't forget your prayers and aspiration when studying and practicing it. Meanwhile, you should remember the content word by word, sentence by sentence, before proceeding with contemplation and meditation. This is the so-called analytical meditation and calm abiding meditation. As a beginner, you cannot directly abide in a meditative state. Therefore, when you meditate according to the practical guide, you should first do the analytical meditation and then alternate periods of analytical meditation with periods of calm abiding meditation. And then in the end, you can naturally abide in the meditative state. This method applies to whatever practice you are undertaking, as Mipam Rinpoche stated clearly in the Beacon of Certainty. Some individuals cannot always maintain awareness of impermanence, which indicates they have not reached the state of meditative abiding. Therefore, they should read the text repeatedly and contemplate the content over and over again. This textual analysis is also considered a practice, as it allows one to delve into deep meaning through careful examination, making it indispensable. The method for listening to the teaching is outlined in Chapter 1. The content itself comprises 7 meditations: the impermanence of the outer universe where beings reside, the impermanence of the beings inhabiting it, the impermanence of holy beings, the impermanence of those in positions of authority. Additional examples of impermanence: the unpredictability of the circumstances surrounding death, and intense awareness of impermanence. The impermanence of the outer universe where beings reside, our world, this outer environment formed by the collective good karma of beings and considered indestructible, encompassing the 4 continents, Mount Meru, the celestial realms, and the Iron Ring Mountains, lasts for many kalpas. However, it is also impermanent and will ultimately be destroyed by 7 fires and 1 flood. The precious garland for the 4 themes says, "It is the same as well with the entire perishable world of your environment. At the times of its disintegration, through 7 fires, 1 flood, or wind, everything will become void, without even a remnant of a tip of a hair left. There will be only space." Scientists agree on the eventual destruction of the universe. They believe that the planets in the universe, including the galaxy, the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, are moving and changing in every instant. Research published in a top-tier scientific journal state that the Earth's current lifetime is around 4.6 billion years, and the Sun's is around 5 billion years, and about 7 billion years from now, the Sun will become a red giant star, engulfing the Earth. Despite divergent conclusions about when exactly the Earth will end, scientists all agree the Earth, as well as the other planets, are not permanent and forever existing. Of course, we are not experts on astronomy and hardly study this field, so when the subject of outer environment is brought up, many of you immediately think of your own house. This is just like ants and other insects that, due to their narrow vision and limited mindset, only care about their own nests and show no interest in the bigger world beyond their own habitats. When I was in middle school, I used to do things like this. During geography classes, I wouldn't pay proper attention. When exams were approaching, I would cut out questions from the textbook, hide them in my sleeves, and plan to sneak a peek during the test. Now, I am not trying to lead kids astray. Don't follow my example. It is the 21st century now, but back when I was studying, it was the 20th century, a completely different time from yours. The outer environment is indeed impermanent. A Dharma friend once told me that after studying the 6th chapter of the wish-fulfilling treasury on the kalpas of destruction and voidness, he generated a strong sense of impermanence. Then when looking at a mountain, he would think, the whole outer environment is impermanent. This mountain looks spectacular, but it is nonetheless impermanent, and at a certain point, it will be non-existent. In the same vein, when we look at a tall building, we should also think, this building is constructed with steel and mortar and appears very sturdy. It may last for a few decades or even a few hundred years. However, since all conditioned things are impermanent, this building will not escape final destruction in the end. We must generate conviction about impermanence. We shouldn't be like some worldly individuals who have no sense of impermanence. Otherwise, we will procrastinate in our Dharma practice and ultimately fail to achieve anything. Why do so many Kadampa practitioners focus primarily on the practice of impermanence? It is because if a person practices impermanence effectively, they will undoubtedly become diligent, avoid laziness and oversleeping. Moreover, they will not become preoccupied with worldly trivialities and will find fewer excuses to avoid practicing. On the contrary, if a person doesn't effectively practice impermanence, no matter how many times they have received empowerment or pith instructions, what they have is simply verbal information about the text, which can only serve as a resource for a hopeful future. Furthermore, they are less likely to genuinely apply the teachings in practice. For this reason, eminent masters of the past placed great importance on the teachings of impermanence. Some people think, I do agree that the body is impermanent, but the outer universe is so vast, can it be destroyed all at once? To be clear, we never said the outer universe would be destroyed in 1 or 2 days. However, you should understand that it is impermanent by nature, so in the end, it will not escape final destruction. Knowing this, we can further realize through inference that the outer environment we live in, as well as the body and mind we possess, will all cease to exist in the end. Therefore, we will develop a great aversion toward the illusion-like world, and this aversion is the best ally of our practice. I hope every guidance, in the words of my perfect teacher, will arise in you an inner experience. Once you've obtained these states of experience, you will surely perfect your practice and won't give in halfway through your spiritual journey. Today, while talking to a Dharma friend, I reflected on this with a strong feeling, saying, I feel so fortunate. When I first came to Larungar, I began my study and practice from the words of my perfect teacher. Debate and discussion are important, but for a beginning practitioner, one must start with the words of my perfect teacher and the way of the Bodhisattva. In my mind, putting the teachings in the words of my perfect teacher into real practice is the most important practice in my life. Failing to establish a solid foundation through this practice is like building a magnificent palace on loose soil. No matter how splendid the exterior and interior designs are, how exquisite the building materials are, how elegant the details are, the building will eventually collapse due to its inadequate foundation. Some teachers do not place importance on preliminary practices. Of course, I am not criticizing any specific teacher. After all, each teacher has their own approach to tame disciples. However, I personally feel that without a solid foundation through preliminary practices, even if a student's progress initially seems good, it can eventually fall apart. While receiving empowerment or pith instructions on the great perfection or Chan practice, the disciples may appear to have a good understanding. This brings great joy to the teacher, as they believe the lineage has more successors. The disciples also feel very grateful regarding the teacher as their Dharma parent. However, after some time, it can be difficult to tell whether the guru-disciple relationship remains the same. Without the foundation, the mansion of realization in the disciple's mind stream can easily fall into ruin bit by bit, leaving nothing in the end. Such a phenomenon is quite common these days. Therefore, I sincerely wish you won't just talk about the preliminary practices. You should emulate Patrul Rinpoche and the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, who deep within their minds regarded ngondro as the most important practice. Only after this foundation is well laid will your subsequent study and practice of the Dharma not be constrained or distracted by external circumstances. For example, when you study the 5 great treatises, the profound Sutrayana and Vajrayana teachings, or when you go out propagating the Dharma and benefiting beings, you will not be bound by various external conditions. If you have conviction about impermanence, when you encounter temptations in the city, you can easily see through their nature. Even if you, as an ordinary person, generate afflictions due to the habitual tendencies of past lives, such afflictions won't last long. It's like a warrior who immediately jumps back up after falling to the ground. A practitioner will immediately guard the mind with vigilance and mindfulness when encountering any obstacle. Such power of the mind is very strong. However, if your ngondro practice is not grounded, hence the power of your mind is not strengthened, you may become lost when facing obstacles, feeling the overwhelming influence of the maras to the point that you can barely fight back. After all, the outer universe is destined for destruction because 1. Everything is impermanent, so it will be gone once the causes and conditions are exhausted. 2. Beings commit serious misdeeds, as stated in the Sutra of the Great Conflagration. When the disasters of fire happen, beings all commit misdeeds, uphold wrong views, reject virtues, and engage in 10 negative actions. The outer environment will vanish sooner or later. Compared to the vast universe, each of us humans is truly insignificant. Nevertheless, each of us is a citizen of the Earth, so we all have the responsibility to protect our planet. We are citizens of the Earth, as are yaks and other animals. Humans and animals are neighbors on this planet. Sadly, many people don't realize this. They slaughter animals, upset the ecological balance, and pollute ecosystems. All of these actions result in the shrinking of human habitat on Earth. Before the 7 stages of fire and 1 of water even begin, perhaps humankind will have already gone extinct due to our own misdeeds. Countries around the world have held many meetings and discussions on these issues, trying to figure out solutions. But so far, the situation has only been somewhat alleviated, and the problems are not yet uprooted. As inhabitants of the Earth, we are responsible for protecting the environments we live in. Even if you reside in a small cabin, you should keep the surroundings clean. It's important to adopt the right attitudes and behavioral intentions to protect the environment. Due to their personal qualities, some people only care about themselves, focusing on what to eat or wear, and rarely think about their larger surroundings. This is not good. We should care about our external environment. We should also protect and care for the animals living within that environment with compassion. By doing so, humans and nature will be in great harmony. Celestial beings will spread auspicious rains of flowers, and people will live in peace and happiness. On the contrary, if human beings think maliciously, act ruthlessly, and destroy nature unscrupulously, disasters are bound to occur. Why have earthquakes, fires, and other natural and man-made disasters occurred so frequently around the world in recent years? In fact, this is connected to the misdeeds of human beings. It is not only Buddhists who believe this. Many scientists in the West also believe there is a mysterious connection between humans and nature. Nevertheless, they haven't yet found the key to solving the mystery. Through the lens of Buddhist views of impermanence and dependent origination, this mystery can be easily understood. As the present great Kalpa draws closer to the time of destruction, the beings inhabiting each realm below the God realm of the first meditative state will gradually vanish from the bottom up until not a single being is left. As those who have studied the treasury of Abhidharma already know, the destruction of a great kalpa takes 20 medium kalpas, during which the destruction of sentient beings lasts for 19 medium kalpas, and the destruction of the outer universe lasts for 1 medium kalpa. Therefore, during the medium kalpas of destruction, beings disappear realm by realm, starting from the hell realms. Those hell beings with heady karmic debts, who must continue experiencing their casual effects, will then be reborn in the hell realm of another universe. Those hell beings with lighter karmic debts will generate virtuous minds through the power of their dharmata, the dharma nature, and as a result, will be reborn in the realm of pretas. Then beings in the realms of pretas, animals, and humans will also progressively disappear. Some will be reborn in another universe, while others will be reborn in a higher realm due to the power of dharmata. Eventually, beings will disappear realm by realm until no one is left below the God realm of the first meditative state. In general, humans must practice until they reach and maintain a certain level of meditative concentration so they can be reborn in the God realm of the first concentration, or the first dhyana level. However, during the kalpas of destruction, they do not need to practice. They can attain the first meditative state through the power of dharmata. Then 7 suns will appear in the sky one after another. Here, some scriptures state that there will indeed be 7 suns, while other scriptures mention 1 sun with heat equivalent to 7 suns. However, the viewpoint of Patrul Rinpoche aligns with that of Longchenpa, as stated in his wish-fulfilling treasury, and this viewpoint is also expressed in the Dirghagama Sutra, which states that there will be a total of 7 suns. I conducted a detailed comparison of some Buddhist scriptures and found the Patrul Rinpoche's viewpoint here is consistent with that in the Dirghagama Sutra and somewhat different from that in the Treasury of Abhidharma. Of course, the words of my perfect teacher is a practical guide, while the Treasury of Abhidharma offers detailed analysis, resulting in different presentation styles that I won't elaborate on. If you are interested in the Treasury of Abhidharma, I encourage you to consult its commentaries. What I am about to teach below is covered in the 3rd chapter. The first sun will burn down all trees and forests. The second will dry up all streams, creeks, and ponds, including the stream at Larangar where nuns wash clothes. The third will dry up all the rivers, including the Ganges River and Naranjana River in India, and Yangtze River, Jinsha River, and Yellow River in China. And the fourth will leave all the Great Lakes, even Manasorovar, completely dry, without a single drop of water remaining. When the 5th sun appears, the great oceans, too, will progressively evaporate at first to a depth of 100 leagues, then of 200, 700, 1,000, 10,000, and finally 80,000 leagues. The remaining seawater will shrink from a league down to an earshot, until not even enough remains to fill a hoofprint. Some scientists believe that the sun will eventually become a red giant star, and 1 billion years later, no living beings will be left on Earth due to the burning heat. By the time the 6th sun appears, the entire Earth and its snow-capped mountains will have burnt up. And when the 7th emerges, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the 8 subcontinents, the 7 golden mountains, and the iron encircling mountains are all engulfed in flames. As said in the sutra, when the great Kalpa approaches its end, the entire universe is destined for destruction. All the mountains will be burned down, and not a single particle of dust will remain. The flames spiral downward, incinerating all the hell realms. There won't be any beings left in the hell realms, so the fire will only engulf the outer environment of the hells. As the fires surge upward, it will engulf the celestial palace of Brahma, already long abandoned. The beings in the celestial realms have been reborn elsewhere, owing to their karmic forces or the power of Dharmata, leaving the palace empty. Above, the younger gods of the realm of clear light will panic and cry out in fear. What an immense conflagration! But the elder gods will comfort them, saying, "Do not panic and do not be afraid. Once it reaches the world of Brahma, it will recede. This has happened before." After 7 such destructions by fire, realms including the god realm of the first concentration and below will all disappear. Rain clouds will form in the realm of the gods of the second concentration. Torrential rain, like yokes of wood, and showers of arrows will pour down from the sky. Like salt dissolving in water, everything up to and including the realm of the gods of the clear light will vanish. When the god realm of the second concentration is closer to the time of its destruction, the beings inhabiting it will have already been reborn elsewhere, so the water will only destroy the outer environment. After such devastation by 7 fires and 1 great water is over, the cross Vajra of wind at the base of the universe will surge upward. Like dust scattered by the wind, everything up to and including the realm of the gods of the third meditative concentration will be swept away. Why will the god realms of the first, second, and third concentration be destroyed by fire, water, and wind, respectively? According to Buddhist scriptures such as the Treasury of Abhidharma, this occurs because these three concentrations or meditative states correspond to specific faults of the conceptual mind. In particular, the first concentration, the first dhyana level, has the features of conception and discernment, like fire, so the corresponding god realm is destroyed by fire. The second concentration, the second dhyana, has the features of joy and pleasure, like water, so the corresponding god realm is destroyed by water. The third concentration, the third dhyana, has the features of inhalation and exhalation, like wind, so the corresponding god realm is destroyed by wind. The fourth concentration, known as the ultimate meditative state, is free from the 8 faults of meditative concentration, so the corresponding god realm won't be destroyed by fire, water, or wind. Since the god realm of the fourth meditative state won't be destroyed during the Great Kalpa, does this mean it is permanent? Of course not. Longchen states in Wish-Fulfilling Treasury that beings in the god realm of the fourth meditative state will either move to another universe due to the power of Dharmata or will eventually die out. In the end, countless 4 continents, Mount Meru, and the heavenly realms in the 3,000-fold universe will not escape final destruction, and everything will become a great void. As the Buddha says in the Buddha Speaks of Impermanence, the earth, the sun, and the moon will all perish in due time. Not one thing in the world can escape impermanence. In fact, the principle of impermanence is very profound. Taranatha tells a story in his History of Buddhism in India. King Ashoka built 84,000 stupas to enshrine the relics of the Buddha, as a way to repent for his past wrongdoings. After the project was completed, to celebrate and dedicate the merit, he devised a plan to make offerings to members of the Sangha for 3 months. He invited many monks and made great offerings in a forest garden. Ashoka especially had faith in an old bhikkhu who occupied the first seat in the row and made a special offering to him. This old bhikkhu was in fact quite unlearned and dim-witted and couldn't even recite 1 verse. After mealtime, those who sat in the lower seats asked him, "Do you know why the king made a special offering to you?" The old bhikkhu answered, "I don't know." They then told him, "The king wants to ask for teachings after the meal is offered, so you must give a teaching." The words struck the old bhikkhu, who said, "I have been upholding Upasampada for 60 years, but I don't understand a single verse. Had I known the king's intention, I would have passed my food to another monk so that he could give the teaching. But now that I've finished my meal and cannot spit it out, what should I do?" He was tormented by his thoughts. At that time, there was a garden deity in the forest who was aware of the old bhikkhu's thoughts. He considered, if the old bhikkhu offers no teaching, the king, after having done such a great virtuous deed, may develop wrong views and lose faith. Therefore, the tree spirit transformed into human form and approached the old bhikkhu, telling him, "If the king asks for the teaching, you may say, 'The earth and the mountains will all perish, let alone your throne. Your Majesty, please contemplate this,' or dot." Soon the king came and offered the old bhikkhu a set of golden kashayas, the robes of a fully ordained monk, and then sat by his side for teaching. The Tibetan region also has a tradition of giving special offerings to senior practitioners. For example, if there are 20 monks offering chanting service, and the donor offers 20 yuan to each of the Sangha members, they will specially offer 40 yuan to the monk in the first seat. Perhaps it was the same in India back then. The old bhikkhu repeated what he had just heard from the garden deity. Upon hearing it, the king, due to his faith, was filled with great awe. He deeply contemplated the meaning of what the bhikkhu said and felt overjoyed by the significance of the bhikkhu's words. Then the garden deity told the old bhikkhu, "As an ordained monk, You shouldn't waste the devotees' offerings. The old bhikkhu agreed, so later he sought teachings from acharyas, or teachers, practiced wholeheartedly, and attained arhathood 3 months later. Therefore, the principle of impermanence is indeed supreme. When you visit a place and a benefactor makes a generous offering and then asks for teachings, if you know nothing, you can always say, "The earth and the mountains will all perish, let alone your wealth. Please think about this." The audience laughs. This is an important teaching that will surely benefit him, providing he has faith. Reflect deeply and sincerely. If every one of the billion universes that constitute the cosmos, each with its own Mount Meru, 4 continents and heavens, is to be simultaneously destroyed in this way, in the end, all things dissolve into a vast and empty void. Since even a great cosmos eventually fades into nothingness, how can our fleeting human existence, fragile like flies at the end of the season, ever be considered stable or permanent? Buddhacharita, Act of the Buddha, says, "Fires of the kalpa of destruction can melt down Mount Meru and evaporate all oceans, let alone these human bodies of ours, which are like bubbles. Then how can we expect our bodies to remain forever? We should understand that the mountains will be destroyed, the oceans will be destroyed, and the whole world will be destroyed. So there is no need for us to grasp anything so tightly. If a person lacks conviction about impermanence due to insufficient practice, they will think that everything exists inherently, including houses, cars, bodies, and so forth. If one tightly clings to something that they believe truly exists, failure will come to that person's practice. However, if we practice well on impermanence, we won't face this issue. In short, we should carefully contemplate and truly practice the above-mentioned content. It says in the Pure Rules of Chan monasteries, one should practice Dharma diligently, as if to put out a fire on one's head. Just remain mindful of impermanence, and be cautious not to indulge in indolence. We should reflect on this in our own meditation practice. We must practice diligently from this moment forward. We cannot procrastinate on our practice and simply set it aside. Instead, we should contemplate impermanence and engage in diligent practice as promptly as a woman puts out the fire in her hair. Please do not squander your time idly. This human form that we have is hard to obtain and easy to lose. We never know when we'll leave this world. So whenever we think of engaging in positive actions, we should do so immediately and not procrastinate. Therefore, please cultivate renunciation now and practice diligently now. On the other hand, we should always exercise restraint when we have the intention to engage in negative actions.